Welcome again to the Housing Action Coalition's Affordable Housing Happy Hour. For people who just joined, we're just going to give it another minute or two to get the full crew here, and then we will get going. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hope everyone has their cocktail of choice with them. It is a happy hour. So before we get started, I'll just share a little behind the scenes conversation that was happening at the Housing Action Coalition today. We were looking at the RSVPs for the event, and we were really excited that there were more RSVPs from Los Angeles County, from people from Los Angeles County joining us than there were actually from Marin County. And so we just thought that was kind of an interesting little insight into a Bay Area focused conversation on affordable housing.
Doesn't it say more about Marin than anything else?
Perhaps it does.
Also, the people in Marin have certainly had their fill of me. So like
Hey, we're doing 2 projects there. Don't be so hard on them.
I know.
I'm sure that they were really easy to get entitled and they were streamlined from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, just thought that, draw your own conclusions that you would like. We just thought that was it. We noted that. We thought that was interesting. All right, well, we are going to get started. We believe that Director Shaw is going to be with us in a couple of minutes, but let me just... So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us to kick off Affordable Housing Month with today's critical conversation about how to expand affordable housing opportunities across the Bay Area. My name is Todd David, and for those of you who do not know me, I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Action Coalition. We're extremely excited about today's program and about how many of you have tuned in, which is why I'm actually going to take a moment to plug 2 upcoming Housing Action Coalition events that are going to be taking place this month that will likely be of interest to many of you. First, this Friday, May 7th at 4 p.m., we will have a conversation with a California Assembly member, Tim Grayson, about what he and other pro-housing lawmakers in Sacramento are doing to help alleviate our state's housing challenges. Please join us and bring your housing questions. The registration link is in the chat. Second, you won't want to miss our 15th annual Spring Symposium on Wednesday, May 26th, from 11:45 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. You can take a long lunch and hear from HUD Senior Advisor Richard Cho, the mayors of San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, and our media roundtable of housing reporters from Vox, LA Times, KQED, as they discuss the most exciting and innovative solutions to our housing crisis in the Bay Area, across California, and around the country. The registration for link is also in the chat. And now back to affordable housing. So for those who do not know, the Housing Action Coalition is about a 22-year-old pro-housing organization. We advocate for housing at all levels of affordability. So when we think about that, we're thinking about 100% subsidized, traditional affordable housing, missing middle income housing, and market rate housing. Obviously today, we're going to be concentrating on the 100% affordable housing. And for such an important topic, we're fortunate to be joined by speakers who have devoted their careers to making affordable housing more widely available to our region's residents. I want to thank them for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us today. And I also want to thank our excellent co-hosts for turning out such a large crowd. Our co-hosts include Silicon Valley at Home, Greenbelt Alliance, the United Democratic Club, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, California YIMBY, and YIMBY Action. Building deed-restricted, subsidized affordable housing in every city and neighborhood in the Bay Area is a critical part of solving our affordability and displacement crisis. To get that done, it will take a concerted collaboration between the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And in just a moment, our expert panel will share their perspectives on how to successfully forge such partnerships. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator. She is a member of the a board member of the Housing Action Coalition and the manager of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the housing manager for the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Thank you, Xiomara Cisneros, for leading our conversation.
Thanks, Todd, for that introduction. Really excited to be here, day one of Affordable Housing Month. Let's get this party started. I hope y'all have your cocktails. I just have water in here. It would make a really interesting conversation if it was vodka, but maybe another time. Let's go ahead and introduce our speakers, our experts. First off, we have Sam Moss, the ED for Mission Housing Development Corporation. He oversees the day-to-day administrative efforts, including assets, program, and services. Since he took the reins in September 2013, he has grown the organization to 32 employees, added the construction of more than 1,000 new and 100% affordable housing units to the Mission Housing pipeline. He was appointed as commissioner for the San Francisco's Building Inspection Commission in 2018. And in 2017, the late San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee appointed Sam to the Treasure Island Development Authority Board of Directors. He is a founding member of the YIMBY Action Coalition, and I don't know if I actually said YIMBY Action, there you go. And previously sat on HAC's executive committee team. And he's the advisory board member for the Mexican Museum in San Francisco. So with that, yes, and his wife is saying in the chat, very impressive, which I agree, Laura Foote. And with that, I would like for each of the panelists to just take 30 seconds, since I'm going to go ahead and introduce each of you, just express why Affordable Housing Month is important to you. So Sam.
Thank you, and thanks for the introduction. I'm really honored to be here. This is a great panel. You know, for me, I think Affordable Housing Month is so important because of the visibility. You know, our industry unfortunately suffers from some bad opinions about it that's founded, you know, from decades ago with failed public housing attempts and things like that. And the current affordable housing industry is so great and does such a good job, you know, in terms of the high quality housing that we build and run, that having a month like this where we can really kind of normalize affordable housing and not make it this mythical creature that some people think that it is, I think is really important. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And okay, so I'm not as prepared as I should be right now. Next we have Maureen, and I had like one job, and I always like to say your name correctly, which is embarrassing because my name is Xiomara Cisneros. It's like a really hard, complicated name. So
But beautiful.
Maureen, yeah, I like it now. I didn't like it so much growing up. Maureen Sedonaen.
Sedonaen, you did.
All right. Well, I was close. Thanks.
A lot of vowels.
Yeah. All right. So you are the Chief Executive Officer for San Francisco Habitat for Humanity. You bring over 30 years of leadership experience And one of your top priorities was to execute the organization's ambitious growth plans, including doubling home building efforts by 2025. And prior to this, you've been in various roles in terms of government, other businesses, nonprofits, previously the president and CEO of Goodwill San Francisco, and also worked for Revolution Foods as regional vice president. Also founded and served as president and CEO for the Youth Leadership Institute for 20 years. And she serves as the board of directors of the Maureen Community Foundation and the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership and the Youth Leadership Institutes. Impressive resume, Maureen. Can you tell us
Thanks,
why
Xiomara. I'm just
Affordable
old,
Housing
that's-
Month? You're like, I know.
Yeah, no, that's really kind of you. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Xiomara. You're one of my faves. And one of the reasons I love affordable housing is because of the people. And I love Affordable Housing Month because all of you who joined this call care about something in our communities that's a crisis that we're all working together on. And I think one of the things that I love about my role at Habitat and Habitat in general, and also this field, is everyone's just so willing to be partners, to roll up their sleeves, to be a thought partner, to be an actual partner in building. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And also, I think that we just are at this incredible inflection point coming out of COVID, where we really have to put the pressure on to increase production, to increase preservation, and to have an aligned strategy across the board. And so for me, the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition and BayHack, the Bay Area Action Housing Coalition, is so critical in bringing us all together and aligning us so that we can actually leverage our strength and also be there for each other and do things like have a fun happy hour and talk about these great issues.
Awesome. Thanks, Maureen. And last but certainly not least, do we have Eric Shaw in the room?
I see him. I see him.
All right. Hi, Eric. I'm going to go ahead and quickly introduce you, and then I'm going to pose a question in 30 seconds or less if you could answer why Affordable Housing Month is important to you. So, Eric Shaw, the Director for Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, previously served as an advisor for the California's Governor's Office of Emergency Services, where he coordinated community planning and engagement and the recovery of the 2018 Camp Fire. Prior to this, he was Director of Office of Planning for Washington, D.C., and the Director of Community Economic Development for Salt Lake City. He has experience working in the Bay Area, so he's from here, some cred, for Silicon Valley Community Foundation and the San Jose Redevelopment Agency. Graduate of both UCLA, Bruins, and the Harvard University Graduate School of Design, he brings a wealth of applicable experience to MOHCD. Welcome, Eric, and why is Affordable Housing Month important to you?
Thank you very much, everyone, and hello. I apologize for being late. I had my day job. Affordable Housing Month is important to me because I'm the Director of Affordable Housing Development in San Francisco. No, I think that it is important because there is a need, right? We've identified now there's structural racism, that capitalism doesn't work sometimes, that 99% of what we gets built in the cities are built in the United States is built through a private transaction. And we just know inherently these systems are exclusionary. And Affordable Housing Month is really important to me because, especially in our area in San Francisco, because we've lifted up and shown the world that we're willing to meet the challenge. I think there's no place else in the country have said we're probably one of the best resource cities in the United States that relates to affordable housing. We know it's not enough, but $600 million, $300 million for homeless, another $140 million, that is huge for us. And so I just think that that is so important. And finally, in the end, I just came from seeing the mayor and the speaker at Etley's Housing for Veterans and Families. And my friend was giving me a tour of Mission Bay, and the fact that 40% of the housing in emerging neighborhood is affordable, that 100% affordable, that we prioritize affordability from day one in the communities that we're working in, from Hope SF to all of our new developments. It just really is outstanding that growth and affordability and inclusion are aligned in San Francisco. And so it's really important for us to tell that story to ourselves, to realize we're not fighting each other. We actually believe in the same things, and it's just great. That was more than 30 seconds, but I'm excited. Thank you.
I appreciate that and share the excitement. That's really exciting. I was into a heart thing too. I saw you raise your hand, Maureen, and I was like, did you want to comment? Yeah, like let's do the heart.
Trying to do like high five, but I failed.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. And I know some of you have some presentations. Sam, did you want to kick us off and talk a little bit about more affordable housing?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So can I just share my screen? Is that, yeah? Okay, cool. Sorry. Okay. I am having trouble. Sorry, everybody. Give me 2 seconds. So, all right, I'm having a little bit of trouble. I think I can just do this anyway. I could do this. Sorry, guys, I'll have to do this without my presentation. One thing that we wanted to talk about today is, what is affordable housing? Affordable housing has a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people. There is what I believe a lot of people think with affordable housing is just that there is, housing that is affordable to the normal person. And that can be, what people typically believe when they say we need more affordable housing. For the purpose of today, at least a part of the discussion, we can discuss, thank you, Xiomara, you are awesome. I really appreciate that. As an executive director, I reserve the right to not actually know how any of this technology works. It is my God-given right as an ED, and I just want everyone to know they can do that. So Mission Housing is founded in 1971. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer. And what that means is Mission Housing builds and runs government regulated and subsidized housing for low-income families, individuals, and seniors throughout San Francisco. We are called Mission Housing Development Corporation. And of course, as our name says, the majority of our properties are in the Mission, but we have since grown. We have properties in Mission Bay. We're a co-developer at the Balboa Reservoir. We're about to break ground above the Balboa BART station. And so we actually do believe that the West Side has a lot more to give when it comes to affordable housing. So we currently have 38 buildings with 1,000 more units in our pipeline. And we have approximately 3,000 tenants. We're hoping to have about 4,000 over the next five to 10 years. And most importantly, our largest and most important department is our resident services. And we have about 50 plus partners, including Habitat for Humanity that we partner with on various projects. So what is subsidized affordable housing? What it is a mechanism where a nonprofit affordable housing development company partners with a government agency. Most of the time nowadays, it is with the San Francisco Mayor's Office of Housing. Thank you, Eric. Eric always gives us all the money we want, no questions asked. But this picture is a really good example of the relationship of how the rent gets paid. And so when people say Section 8, Section 8 is kind of a euphemism for all things affordable housing, but what it really is a rental subsidy. And there are many different kinds of subsidies. Section 8 is the thing we use, but there's many different sections, many state, local, federal funds. And what it is essentially a tenant that wins the lottery and gets to move into Mission Housing's building pays approximately 30% of their income. Now, the rent itself, let's just say for the sake of this conversation, if the rent is $100 a month, the tenant, let's say the tenant can pay $30. The subsidy covers the other $70, so that at the end of the month, the landlord, the nonprofit developer, can count on a standard amount of money from each property, just like normal private market rate housing, so that we can then take that rent and run the building. Next slide. And this, so really affordable housing in the sense that because it is deed restricted, because the government has oversight and regulatory requirements, right? So we partner with the San Francisco Mayor's Office of Housing and HUD and HCD. And typically the Mayor's Office of Housing is kind of the regulatory I like to call them overlord. Eric, don't tell your staff I said that, please. But essentially,
They call me that too.
Not that Mission Housing would ever de-affordable our properties, but to keep everyone honest, we sign these things called deed restrictions. And that's where the real partnership with the city and county, state, and federal government comes into hand. And it essentially limits the rent amount and the amount of money at the income level that a tenant can make to qualify at a building. And we do it for 55 years at a time, but every 15 years or so, when we need to like refinance the building or something, we re-up that 55 years. So in effect, our partnership with the government creates a deed restriction that that makes it affordable, 100% affordable in perpetuity. And so when we talk about income levels that qualify at properties, this is a high, and these figures are taken from the most recent Mayor's Office of Housing figures. So we use what's called the area median income. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a collection of all the incomes in the area. In San Francisco, for instance, it's actually larger than San Francisco. There's a little bit of San Mateo and a little bit of Marin included, which does skew the amount compared to hyper-local neighborhoods like the Mission or the Bayview. And we do have to deal with that. There is a balancing act. And so different funding sources let you rent to different income levels. Mission Housing is as I said, a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We portfolio-wide have a focus. We average about 45 to 50% of the median income. And as you can see, that lands us in the very low income households. And so the low income households can make up to 80% of the median income. And this is for one person, and it goes up 2, 3, 4 people. The more dependents you have, the more money your household can make. Finally, there's moderate income households, which can earn up to 105% of median income. And until very recently, in fact, until the beginning of 2020, it was impossible to subsidize middle income housing. But the state of California has changed some rules, and our industry is still kind of figuring it out. But I do think that one of the more exciting things, I believe, is that our industry is finally going to be able to have a true wide array of income levels. Of course, we need more housing at the very low levels, but it is important to point out that we can now subsidize with tax credits moderate income households. Next slide. And this is just an example of kind of jobs, that make on average, taken from recent census data. A lot of times in affordable housing, I will readily admit that we use all these acronyms and we talk really fast, and it's usually about like proving how smart you are and how many funding sources you know about, and you throw things out like AMI and deed restricted and things, and you kind of lose sight of the human factor, that at the end of the day we're housing human beings. And so one reason that we really like this slide is that it really shows the wide array of individuals that live in our buildings. There's a stigma lots of times that if you live in affordable housing, you don't have a job, you're like a deadbeat or something. And that's just simply not true. Almost to a T, the overwhelming majority of our families have multiple people working, have multiple incomes. And I think that this kind of really lays out the fact that, lots of people live in affordable housing. And so this is just further breaking down. So the low 55 to 70% is low income of AMI. And so just to break it down for an hourly rate, it's about $23 to $25 an hour. Next. The 70 to 80% is a little bit higher, but we hear a lot about teacher housing. There's also, I have heard rumblings about we're building at the Potrero bus yard, MTA housing. These things, we have, because of organizing and unions and things like that, these industries have secured somewhat of a better wage than they have in the past. And it's important to note that to not let them leave them behind. So it's important to find programs that support them as well. And finally, for middle income housing, 80% to 100% of AMI. Here's some typical jobs and the hourly rate. And I think it's important to point out that our buildings tend to run the gamut of income levels. At the Balboa Upper Yard, for instance, we will go from literally 0% AMI up to 110% AMI. We hear a lot about like segregation and things like that. And I think that's ironic because, our buildings are truly mixed income and I think have a level of diversity that most market rate buildings might even, wish that they had. And the main level of diversity is actually the income levels that range at one building or another. So just to close it out, these just a few article headlines. Mission housing, who needs affordable housing? Like everyone needs everyone. All people need affordable housing. Some people can afford it more than others, right? If you have enough income that you can pay a market rate unit and you only pay about 30% of your income, you have affordable housing that is affordable, and you also have resources. You have the ability to hire a lawyer and defend yourself and things like that. And so the low income, mission housing, we see ourselves as kind of a social safety net for our low income communities. And now more than ever, affordable housing, especially after COVID, affordable housing is important now more than ever. And I think one thing that people don't realize is that what I always like to say is, like us affordable housing developers, we're not in the eviction business. And so, we get our tenants and we expect them to be there forever. We might have to work with them a lot. They might have just gotten housing for the first time in their lives. But, now more than ever, I think it's important to note that the nonprofit affordable housing industry is centered around not just housing people, but keeping them housed so that they can raise families or be productive on their own. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam, for that presentation. We got a lot of good comments and questions, but we'll hold off on those questions till the end. So thank you again, Sam. And Maureen, you're next. Awesome. And you're on mute still.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Great, perfect. Thank you. Great job, Sam, and thank you for sharing what you shared. I think, I think one of the things that we really see at Habitat is, serving that 50 to 80% AMI. And one of the things that makes Habitat so unique is that we actually have a homeownership model. So I'm just going to share a little bit about what we're doing in homeownership, and then talk a little bit about what some of the advocacy and legislation work we're doing, and then I'll save a lot of other comments for the question and answer time. But so here's what we've completed, the homes that we've developed so far. You can see throughout the peninsula, we're Habitat of Marin, San Francisco, and San Mateo counties. So the sort of the Bay Area region. You can see what we've completed there, and then also the projects that we have in our pipeline, including the project that we're doing with Sam at Balboa Reservoir. Thank you, Sam, in the mayor's office, and also Amber Drive with support from the mayor's office of housing. Really excited about that. A 99-year-old that donated his mother's home, and we're able to put 8 homes on that in Diamond Heights. And so that's really an exciting project as well. So why does the homeownership matter? Well, we think we're one of the only providers of homeownership opportunities. And we just think it's a really important way for people to both matriculate out of maybe long-time affordable rental to go to that next level and become that first-time home buyer. And also for folks to be able to own homes and build that credit and build that equity and build wealth in their lifetime. So a couple of things I put here: narrowing the racial ownership and racial wealth gap by increasing local, state, and national funding for home ownership is really important. About 96% of all funding for affordable housing goes to rental, which is important, but we really think that it's also important to include home ownership opportunities in that pie. So we're glad and excited that our partners see that as well. First-time low-income home buyers, they're able to propel their families forward. And I'm going to share some statistics with you, but not only by saving and having the opportunity to save and build towards their kids' futures, but where we're seeing, and through our 10-year research, that actually we're seeing the results of parents who weren't able to go to college, where 21%, 65% of their kids are able to go on and go to college by becoming Habitat homeowners. And finally, it impacts people by counting rooms, not doors. And I know this is always a little bit of a discussion in our field. And I think, again, we think it's important to look at how many people are totally being served by the number of units that are being provided. We think that this really is an important reparation to create more home ownership for people of color in the United States. We did a horrible job in our many generations back of creating inequity by zoning people out, by racially profiling people in lending and credit, et cetera. And so we're really dedicated. Habitat's model is a 0 down, 0% interest loan for those homeowners. And we cap their housing expenses at 30%. So they're able to actually save for other things. And home equity is a primary wealth builder in America. And so we want to see more people have this opportunity. We think we all in this group tonight, all of you that are here, share this common goal. 35% of Bay Area homeowners are people of color, although they make up 60% of the population. At Habitat, we're really proud to say that 85% of our homeowners are people of color. So you can see here some statistics. I won't read them all, but incredible outcomes for families, whether it's educational, community engagement, stress, health, pride, et cetera, all the things that really do matter. And then on an advocacy front, we've been very involved in not only working on CEQA reform, but we've been working on an ADU bill to try to have people be able to parcelize by right their land, so they can add an ADU and they can parcelize it and make it a separate housing unit, create more affordable housing, more affordable home ownership opportunities. And our sister habitats in both Santa Cruz and in Butte County after the fires have done this very successfully. So we're working on making this some statewide legislation. We're also pushing to push more of the resources, 20% if we can, set aside to go to home ownership, affordable home ownership programs at a statewide level, and also continue to move more legislative barriers and things like choking at the counter, et cetera, out of our way so that we can build faster and we can have more impact. So as you all know, sometimes on a local level, the political whims of a particular city council get in the way of building more affordable home ownership. So we're really appreciating the united front that we've been able to build in the field, where we can start to look and push for legislation that moves us forward. So I'm going to stop there and answer questions, but that's your quick summary of why home ownership matters. And back to you, Xiomara.
Xiomara, this is Todd. I'm just going to jump in and ask Maureen a quick question. As the executive director, Sam says, executive directors get certain privileges. So Maureen, could you speak a little bit to the history of low and middle income affordable housing or home ownership, and why does it seem to have struggled to get the attention that it should be and the resources that it should be receiving?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks, Todd. And I'll say a couple things. I think, for one thing, I think that a lot of the money that was pushed out of government agencies in the 50s and 60s and the war on poverty in particular in the 70s really created a model where we were sort of building, as Sam said, a sort of Section 8 psyche, or a sort of psychological frame around what people needed. And what they needed was to be in completely subsidized housing without any thought about matriculating out of it. And so that stability would be really good for them. Secondly, we incentivize communities through LIHTC and other tax benefits and community benefits for people to build a small amount of affordable homeownership when they're building homeownership. And so it's really hard to make your project pencil when you're doing this model. So the truth is that, it's very difficult for people to create homeownership models in affordable housing for this area, for this wage, income band of families. So that's been not very politically sexy to sort of say, hey, let's push this money forward. A third thing I would say is that there's been sort of people feeling like down payment assistance is the solution and it's going to sort of answer the call. And in certain cases, it certainly does. But again, it doesn't, sometimes it only benefits that one family, and sometimes it benefits that family and then for a very long tail, and then a city gets that money back and is able to recycle it. And so part of what we're pushing for at Habitat nationally and statewide is to say home ownership has to be part of the equation. And we don't ever think we're going to scale. We're not going to be Sam in Mission Housing, and we're not going to do thousands of units, but we should be able to do hundreds of units a year simultaneously, creating home ownership in our region. And so what we need is a small amount of subsidy when you look at it overall to create these forever affordable units that then get passed on from one family to another family to another family. And so it's a complicated sort of web of reasons, but I think we've had a hard time sort of at a legislative level and a local level convincing people that homeownership matters and the income and the impact of that homeownership on those families and their not only their personal financial trajectory for those parents, but for their kids and their grandkids. And then the last thing I'll say is the home preservation part about helping low-income people. Most of the people we do repair work with, we completed our 210th repair recently. They are 30% AMI and they're struggling to hold on to their homes. And so I think that that's important as well, is to preserve home ownership for those folks through repair programs.
And I just say in the end is that sometimes you have to ask, like, you know, I think Maureen and I met my early in my tenure and said, I have this program, can MoCD partner? And I think this is our first home ownership construction piece. And my team had to learn how to underwrite differently. When we went to our interagency loan review, it was different. But then we realized in the end that the price per unit is a lot less. And I think people forget this, you know, there are a lot of, we are a landed place based off of landowners. The tax deals and the returns are so different regardless of the money that you have on this. And so really understanding that the national system really subsidizes not the right way, just gives a lot of leeway and gives a lot of capital and opportunity to people who own houses in a way they don't for renters. And so it's amazing as we think about wealth building, economic opportunity, to unlock that opportunity for our low-income people as that happens. So,
you know, and there's a question someone asked about.
We jumped in. I'm sorry about that.
I'll stop.
Yeah. No worries. Like, I did just want to take a step back and just for the benefit of the audience, have you, Eric, speak a little bit more about your role. What is a mayor's office of housing and community development? Just like maybe bring it back to basics, but this is a really good conversation. So let's definitely pick it right back up.
So thanks a lot. And, you know, so our office is really unique. We're one of the only housing offices that's actually located in a mayor's office for any major city. Most of them are independent agencies. But I say this sort of way. So I'm a bank. So the mayor's office for housing community development does not build housing. We invest in Sam and Maureen to build housing for us in line with policy goals and priorities laid out by the mayor and by the board of supervisors and by the federal and state government. So in that instance, I even get my team to say, MoCD does not build housing. We work with partners to build that housing. And so that's one section of our group. We also invest in the preservation of housing. So if we know that housing's on the market, we will invest with a community partner to purchase that to ensure that people can stay in their homes and rehab them. And that's called the Small Sites Program. I'm also a president of a foundation. The Community Development Division gives out between $50 and $85 million a year in funding. Some of that federal funding, some of that city funding, some of that state funding that really support around the community stabilization, creating community amenities, and actually investing in the community services that, that support a lot of our affordable housing. In addition to that, they help underwrite what's called the local operating subsidy program. So for very low income people, homeless people, we sort of write the check to the landlord to help cover the rent for very low income people through that. I'm also a real estate broker. And so in that instance, the down payment assistance program, up to $375,000 in down payment assistance to people looking to purchase homes, is administered by my organization. And then in addition to that, what we call BMR units. So for the inclusionary housing that's created by market, the affordable housing set aside and market rate housing, we're the ones that administer Dahlia to make sure that we can match those in need with the appropriate income for homes, and then around the support services and monitoring for that. And so it's a really large enterprise, but we've been instituting something called One MoCD. I think for Sam, I work with him through the BMR side. I work with him through the housing investment side and also on the services side. And so really now working how we can do strategically to make sure that all of our investments in line, our partnerships are working in the same way to advance that people are being housed and they stay in housing.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric, for that overview. And I have a couple of questions, and then we want to bring it and open up to the audience. So please keep putting your questions and comments in the queue. Just picking up like with Todd's question and where y'all pretty much left off. It seemed like there is this tension, right, with affordable housing rental versus affordable housing homeownership. So I'm curious if Eric, you could just provide more context to like maybe how things were before you came in, and like maybe just were able to make things more equitable and maybe smooth it over the process. And I don't know if Sam or Maureen, if you have any more additional comments about maybe this overall tension, how things are evolving.
So, I mean, the tension in the end is that, like, well, one, San Francisco is a very expensive place to live for everyone, right? Second of all, we segment our product in a way that isn't natural. So if you think about how someone actually lives, you start in a studio. When you live with your parents, you know, hopefully, you progress to a studio, you progress to a single family home, you move through here. And so the way our system sort of works is we have these very rigid types because of income or by investment. And I think right now we're trying to figure out a more seamless way to find partners, to give flexibility to Sam and Maureen, to understand how people, what they do really well. But just say in the end that, like, if you want to live in San Francisco, there is more than one way to live in San Francisco. And I think Sam and Maureen and I had this conversation, me, Xiomara, right, that we need to like give this flexibility and opportunity, right, for everyone, from homelessness and permanent supportive housing all the way up to home ownership for people who may make families may make $200,000 a year, but it's $1.2 million a year for a house. And so the idea right now is, the hope for me in working with you all is really creating the continuum of opportunity and the continuum of choice. That's how we keep people in San Francisco, and that's how we keep opportunity in San Francisco.
Awesome. Sam, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to, just to back it up a little bit, I want to say, I hope everyone knows how refreshing it is. You know, Eric, cards on the table, your predecessors did not agree with you when it came to ownership. And, you know, there's an unfortunate stigma with low-income individuals, and like Xiomara's, you know, where we get this Section 8 or die, and it's rental only. And, you know, I think unfortunately, a lot of our bureaucracies have gotten to the point where even if they won't admit it, there's some underlying thought that low-income people maybe shouldn't be allowed to build equity, you know, if they're getting help with that initial purchase. The Sanford, you know, the BMR condo program does not build equity for its recipients, you know, and I think it's awesome because, you know, we do have, I mean, I would personally love to just burn you have to own a home to build wealth world down. I think you know, that in my extracurricular activities, I certainly try to, but that's not going to happen for a long time. And it is true in this country that we have made it so that building wealth, owning a home is the major way to do that. And I think it's great that the Mayor's Office of Housing is finally, you know, Eric, that you got your people to underwrite it. Because I assure you, Maureen was told no many times, you know, and I do think it's kind of this weird stigma that people think, well, if we're giving a government subsidy, then they shouldn't be allowed to build equity. But then we turn around and we let people have mortgage interest tax deductions for their third vacation home. Like that isn't the biggest subsidy that we give in the world. So I just really want to applaud Eric and the Mayor's Office of Housing for having an open mind, because like you said, I mean, everything we got to do everything we can to deal. We
just identified that Section 8 vouchers can also be used for down payment assistance in home ownership now too. Like we're looking at that model as we launch the Dreamkeepers initiative. So how can there be other supports and still build that?
Yeah, I guess, and I just want to chime in and say, you know, first of all, yes, Eric, you deserve a lot of credit for your leadership. And I'm not just, you know, saying that because everybody's here. It's true. And I think the other thing is, you know, to me, it's about the continuum. It's not all home ownership or all rental, but how do we lift people up? How do we lift our community up? We need all housing. We need market rate housing. We need more of it. And so we've got to figure out how to do that across our very expensive region and take advantage of opportunities. So that's why some of this advocacy and legislative work is so important. We've got to get all the things out of the way that people use as blocks, when really what it is they just don't want affordable housing in their neighborhood. They think it's a great idea as long as it happens over there. And so I think it's just, you know, and I do think like with the partnership that we have at Balboa Reservoir is a great example. So it's Avalon Bay, it's bridge housing, it's mission housing, and it's habitat. So we've been able to get all kinds of the spectrum of housing in one community and be able to build that. And with childcare, thank you, Sam. So I think it's just really amazing that we can do these things when we come together, and we don't try to tear each other down. We try to lift each other up and say, how do we do these things together?
That's a great example. And it's unfortunate where like these really amazing projects are like the special snowflake, and we need way more of this. It needs to be ubiquitous, and it's challenging. And I'm just wondering, maybe Sam, like, why is it so challenging? Why is housing so expensive, like each unit to build? Is it the laws? Is it, I saw an article, the cost of lumber, materials, like, can you just unpack that for us a little bit? And others feel free to chime in.
I think it's a great question. And it's really one of the ways that people tend to demonize affordable housing. You know, you read that it costs $800,000 a unit to build. And I want to back up a little bit and say that, unfortunately, the cost per unit is the only metric that we can kind of use to compare market rate and affordable housing. But the thing about affordable housing is that society expects us to solve all the ills of the world at every single project. And when you do that, it costs a lot of money. Every one of our projects has a free computer lab, has childcare, after school care, Head Start, early Head Start, job help, mental health services, resident services. 1950 Mission has a 10,000 square foot rooftop deck that will be the largest open to the public meeting space around there in the Mission. These things are really important, right? We have a mural walkway, low-income artist studios, and a gallery. These things are really important, and we have to provide them because, to be frank, if we don't, the government really isn't. When Reagan defunded HUD, when the Federal Department of Public Health was defunded, a lot of the social safety net that a lot of, say, upper class, mostly white people, take it for granted, it just doesn't exist. And the thing about these buildings is that when we build these big 150 unit buildings, we have space to provide the community rooms, to do the ground floor space. And then finally, we're building nice buildings. There's this horrible stigma that like affordable housing should be cheap housing, right? Like that's good. Like that isn't just the worst thing to think in the world. But so, I think if you compare our industry, especially now, to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, there is a lot more focus now on kind of taking out that bite of the apple as much as we can when we get the opportunity to build. Because what our industry is also dealing with, as Eric mentioned, is we now have a whole generation of buildings that were built in the 70s and the 80s that have significant deferred maintenance, that are costing a lot of money to rehab. And they lasted a long time, but we have systems in place and technologies in place. And though it can get expensive, these new buildings that we're building, they're structurally and environmentally, they're so sound, and they're going to last for a very long time. And so, when you couple all that up, and of course we're prevailing wage minimum, Mission Housing uses union labor only, or at least whenever humanly possible, which we believe in, it tends to add up. And so, the actual cost per unit is actually, it's closer to like $450,000 or $500,000. It's of the actual apartment unit. But we have so many other things that we believe are equally important. Okay, the amount of resident behavioral health, mental health services that we can provide at night, and it's not just for the tenants; it's for everyone that lives in and around that neighborhood. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people that immediately have their lives made better because of those ground floor spaces. And when you total it all up, it gets really expensive. And then, of course, you can couple it with. We have recent legislation, thanks to organizations like YIMBY Action and SFHAC and organizing statewide, things like SB 35 that Senator Wiener wrote that I was proud to help pass back in 2015. They've really streamlined affordable housing. We're living in a new era now where, I don't want to say affordable housing's by right literally, but we are as close as we've ever been. And we're, and it's only getting easier and easier. And so I do think that, we might be in a world where the costs are going to start to come down, but they're never going to come down to where some people think they should until the government gets back in the business of providing the social safety net.
And you know,
Well,
I
and
see-
don't forget, right now, houses are being sold when they say 1.2 million on the
Yeah,
price
right.
tag. They're actually being sold for 1.6 million.
Yeah.
So,
correct.
Yeah.
You know, I see a lot of stuff in the chat, Xiomara, and I'm sorry you're not moderating. I
Go
think
ahead, go
people
for it.
coming as SIDLAC, and that's not obscure. You know, it's a competitive process. And what we're working on, Maureen and Sam and myself, and I think all of us need to do this, is have some advocacy around that story, right? That we don't just invest in housing, we invest in people and we invest in communities. And if we're going to be a banker that just sort of looks at the per unit basis, we're never going to be competitive. And so a lot of the advocacy, a lot of advocacy coming from all of you here and from the folks that's talking is reminding and showing the state, we have the greenest buildings, we believe in project labor, we put in computer labs, everything that you ask for us as a state, that you set as a goal, we do put in our projects, and this is what it costs. And so I think that it's okay to like put the appropriate pressure on SIDLAC, but I think the other story needs to be told of, we are happy we create beautiful, inclusive housing that enhances community. And let me tell you this right now, I will never compromise on strong design. I would never compromise on accountability for racial equity. I would never compromise on labor. I mean, so these ideas right now for us are things we're not going to price out. We're not going to compromise on engagement if it takes more money. But, so in the end, we just have to own the fact that we are hopefully doing good and doing our housing and making our city stronger and sustaining those who are here. And so I know we're talking about SIDLAC. Don't call them and yell at them. Don't.
I'm fine with that.
They're all friends of the Bay Area. But tell them the story about how you care about that building that came in, or how you were helped, or how someone you love got opportunity because we build affordable housing the way we do in San Francisco. That's what I need from the advocacy community as we go up there as well.
I hear a clear call to action and a lot of the changing the hearts and minds and the importance of narrative. So thank you, Eric, for lifting that up. I want to go a little bit into the audience questions. One of them is like a kind of a back to basics one, which is about Section 8, just like a better understanding of Section 8 being used for market rate developments versus just affordable housing. I don't know, Sam, if you just want to clarify Section 8 in general.
Certainly. So there's two kinds of Section 8. There is project-based Section 8, and that is what Mission Housing uses. That is where the owner, the landlord, let's say that there's a 100-unit building, they will have a contract with HUD directly so that each unit has its own Section 8 subsidy. That's how we do. Now, there's also personal Section 8 subsidies, where an individual or a family can go to the housing authority in whatever county they live, and they can get a subsidy that they should, in theory, be able to take to any market rate or private nonprofit development. Mission Housing has some projects that we own that don't have Section 8 contracts. They have tax credits and other things, and we do have some families that have brought Section 8 subsidies to them. So there are two different kinds. I think you don't need to read too far into the news to know that we still live, unfortunately, in a world where private market rate landlords segregate, deny Section 8 subsidies all the time. That is illegal under fair housing. But there are two different kinds. It is differentiating is kind of a wonky thing, but that's what Section 8 is.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam, for that clarification. And I see another question, and I don't mean to keep pitting affordable housing versus or affordable rental housing versus home ownership affordable housing.
Don't worry, we're used to it.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that's the other question. And it doesn't have to be either or, right? Or not mutually exclusive things, right? And I think that's what this question is getting at in terms of when we think about how expensive it is in the Bay Area, when costs or housing selling prices are 1.36, it's disgusting, $1 million. How do we balance that need to maybe
But listen,
want to build.
let's say, let's get to 20% is affordable homeownership in the scale of what we're putting money towards from a public subsidy. Let's understand that we're not benefiting just one family. We're benefiting multiple families for multiple generations that are going to get an opportunity to become first-time home buyers. Let's not forget that we want some of the folks who are in our affordable rentals to matriculate to home ownership, and then ultimately some of them are going to matriculate to market rate ownership. It might not be in the Bay Area, but it might still be. And so I think we just have to see the ecosystem as a healthy thing. You know, one of the things I want to reach out to my brothers and sisters who are here tonight with us and say, we have to stop slitting each other's throats in the alley over money. We have to support the work that we're doing and stop judging each other's models. If you have a way to improve Habitat's model, call me, let's talk about it. You know, it's been 30 years, 40 years, tried and true across the nation, but we're happy to talk about it. And it's about radical inclusivity, and it's about moving the needle for people of color to become homeowners in our region. And I am unapologetic about that. And the second thing I will say is that, you know, homeownership matters for people because it also builds community in a model like ours, where it's a self-help model. It doesn't mean what I'm doing is any more important than what Sam is doing. He is absolutely 100% a valued ally and colleague, and I'm so excited that we're doing something together. We're also partnering with private developers who are doing building. So it all matters to get the work done. And so I'm just making my emphatic speech that I think we have to, you know, really see this as not just, we can be our own worst enemies sometimes when we cut each other in the throat in the alley.
And let's just talk about responsibility too, right? You know, as a person who got a ninja loan at 26, and thank God I was in a market, I was able to flip my space. Excuse my French, I would have been fucked for 15 years, my credit, my psychology, and my life, because the market was predatory. It was preying on people. And, you know, we tie in services, opportunities, counseling, eviction defense, tenant support, collaboration between these folks to really understand how to help people, right? And so, and then all of these models that's focused from OCD and you know, from our mayor is, let's take care of the most vulnerable and let's give them the stability that they need, and what they call it wraparound services, right? That, like, so people, the wraparound is a hug. The wraparound is helping someone stand up. The wraparound is keeping them warm when they are cold. The wraparound is whispering good, soft things in their ear to calm them down. And so just as we think about all these kind of things, I can tell you the trauma of the fear of almost being foreclosed on, and you know, and the idea of risk, and the idea of opportunity. And it really is no risk, no reward. But part of the job of the city and our job as our partners is to mitigate the risk to create the opportunity. And that's every day, all of our jobs here, Xiomara, John Zuckerberg, hopefully with the hack, that's the space where we're coming from in this kind of work.
I also want to add that, not the equity part, but a lot of what people associate with home ownership is security, in the sense that they're not going to be worried about getting Ellis acted or evicted, or, you know, they talk about kind of being the master of their own domain in their own space. And a unique thing about, at least the way Mission Housing runs our buildings and the nonprofit affordable, is that security is, our tenants do have that. You know, we are a landlord, but we really kind of strive to ensure that when they move in, they know that that is their space. We don't go into that space without giving them days of notice. We don't, you know, that is their space. And we do so by we instill a sense of community, and we want them to be proud of their building, of their home. And so I do think that a unique part of nonprofit affordable housing development is that while it is rental and it is actually private, it does really historically and statistically provide for much more secure type of housing.
All right, so we're at time, but I did have one more question, and hopefully you each could answer in 30 seconds or less. But I wanted to know what your affordable housing wish in San Francisco, regionally or statewide in the capital. And maybe if you can't have one, do all of them, just do one of them. But yeah, I don't know who wants to go first.
I wish that HUD would turn Section 8 back on. If HUD turned Section 8 back on, literally tens of thousands of units around the country would pencil out immediately. And it would help so much if HUD would just do that like they did in the 70s.
Maureen, Eric?
Go ahead, Eric.
No, whatever Sam and Maureen say, then they call me and then I say, okay, how much?
I want Eric to award Mission Housing all the RFPs. That's
Oh wait, too late. You only got one wish. And I want to apologize for everyone. I forgot that we were on being taped, and I'm still the director for the mayor's office. I should not have said a bad word. I would deeply apologize for that. I do not use that language in real life or in work life. Maureen.
My wish is that we can get more resources into affordable home ownership and increase that space in the affordable housing sort of ecosystem, and that we can help people understand that the small amount of subsidy that we need in order to do that could help us scale immensely across our region and our state. So, and that people would stop doing baseless CEQA lawsuits. Okay, there we go.
All right. Well, I think I am going to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Xiomara, thank you so much for moderating. You did a great job.
Yay, Xiomara.
Eric, Sam, Maureen, thank you. I want to invite the three of you back. It can't be a housing action coalition conversation if I don't say, like, hey, we should talk about how zoning interfaces with affordable housing at a future conversation.
Yay.
I was going to throw a zoning question in, with 5 minutes left, and I figured I'm not opening that. Everyone, happy Affordable Housing Month.
Yay.
Yeah. Great. Go to. It's really exciting to see the energy and the interest in this. And
follow the OCD Instagram and Twitter. We'll be posting regularly with all of our partners for Affordable Housing Month around all the great work we're doing in the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you all.